So welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're all here. Special thanks to Coach Tim for joining us and walking us through how to get back to racing. And without further ado, I'm going to give it over to Coach Tim, and he's going to help us tackle this because this is huge. You know, 2002.
I'm gonna do my best.
2020 was a bust, right? Like no races, maybe one or two in the beginning of the year, and then nothing. So we're going to be starting to race now. And what do we need to prepare, and how do we get going with this?
All right, sounds good. I will do my best. And I fit right in that boat myself. My last race, triathlon, was September of 2019. So, I raced that fall. Winter was normal. I went and ran training camp in February of 2020. And a week and a half after I got back, everything went crazy and the world shut down. And, and then the season was lost for most of us. Some people got some smaller races in and later in the year. But personally, I didn't have an interest in racing then. There were still too many unknowns, too many variables. There was no vaccine yet. So things weren't really progressing. We were just kind of holding. And I know a lot of people had that same kind of mindset. But obviously now things are getting, I don't want to say they're getting better, but things are advancing. There's vaccines out there. I saw something a couple of times on a couple different news sources that almost 50% of adults in the United States have gotten at least one dose of the vaccine. So we're looking like we're trending the right way. So racing is starting to come back. We had 70.3 St. George this past weekend in Utah. Here in the Mid-Atlantic, our first kind of opening race of the season is this weekend, the Kinetic Triathlon Festival in Lake Anna, Virginia. So I'll be there, not racing, but I have a couple athletes racing, so I'll be there, masked up and cheering and playing support and welcoming some sort of normalcy, back to the endurance sports world. And hopefully we keep going the right way from there.
So let's talk a little bit also. I want to also not only triathlon, but also running races or swimming races or whatever. I mean, is there anything that you feel like we need to be prepared to do prior to, like?
So running races, just as an example, like they're already kind of back. They're not necessarily, they're not back in the same quantities and size of field and that kind of stuff. But some running races are back. Like I ran a trail race in December, a 5-miler, and it wasn't to race. It was just to participate and to have a bit of normalcy because I haven't had any. And endurance sports has been a part of my life for 15 years. So, I was kind of missing that. But as far as what you're preparing for, I think a lot of people with COVID, there's been a bit of a mind game. Endurance sports in general, triathlon, running and anything like that, like it's a lifestyle, right? You get into it for fitness or a new challenge or to do something, better yourself in some way, but they require quite a bit of time and training and effort, and so they become a part of your life. You train daily, you see people all the time, and it's just like getting up and going to work every day, right? It's just part of your lifestyle. And so when all that was taken away from us, a lot of people didn't know what to do, or didn't really know how to go about it. We'll say, like there tend to be two kind of spectrums that I've mostly seen. One was people were like, well, there's no racing, I'm just going to train. It's the only thing that feels normal when nothing's normal. And so they just kept kind of digging, so to speak. And then there was the people like me who I actually didn't think I would be, but I was. I kept training hard when it first hit, because at the time we're like, oh, by summer, the heat will kill it and we'll be back to racing and it'll be this whole thing. And I was like, I had a really good 2019 season, won some overall races, won my age group in state championships. Like I had a lot of momentum and I was ready to crush 2020. And when it became clear that there wasn't going to be a 2020, I pretty much shut down. Like I was going out riding just for fun, but I stopped training, and just was doing it more just for exercise, and started doing some other things because I realized I hadn't had a break in 15 years. And so it was, for me, it was needed. Like didn't realize how mentally burned out I was until I was kind of forced to stop. So those have kind of been the two camps. And if you were someone like me who shut it down early, well, then you had to figure out how to restart the engine in the fall, as things started looking a little better, and we're now looking at 2021. And that's been kind of tough. And I've had that discussion with a lot of people, and I think that they're starting to realize that while maybe they started this stuff for fitness, to make themselves healthier, to accomplish new goals or do bucket list items, things they didn't think they could do, it just became part of their daily life. And so they may have lost their why for doing it. It just became something that they were doing because they did it every day. And so they lost that, this is the reason I'm doing it. And so I've been having quite a few discussions, and I had the internal monologue with myself on what is the why, what's your reason for restarting, right? It got to the point of being convenient, so how do we restart that? And number one is you have to figure out why you want to do it. What drove you here in the first place? And is that still your motivation? If it's not, is there another motivation, right? I got into this for a new challenge, coming from a running background and some other, cycling and for fitness and stuff like that. And then I wanted to start getting better once I did this distance, and I want to do that distance. And then I want to get faster here. And then I got on the podium. Well, now I want to win, right? So my why kept changing competitively. And so I kind of had to relight it, a little bit, relight my fire. And to be honest, it's been a bit of a struggle. I got used to not having to train 20 hours a week and kind of relaxing and saying, oh man, that weather looks crappy, I guess I won't go out, and that kind of stuff. So that's the challenge, is your why, find your why.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that, I don't know, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I will. Maybe we can go around and say what our why is, maybe that's like the start of the motivation of getting back into it. Anybody want to start?
I'll say something, Stephen Albright. So I really like the consistency of having things scheduled that I'm going to do during the week. Like I usually swim a couple of times a week. I usually try to run a couple of times a week. I try to do some bike workouts. I just feel like I've asked that question to myself the last couple of months and for the last year, like maybe I don't want to race as much as I did in the past anymore, but I like doing the exercise. I'll call it doing training, but I feel like I have some consistency, and it saves me money on psychiatric bills. So it helps with my head.
I 100% agree, Stephen. That's how I feel. I could definitely, I don't know that I absolutely love the races, but I do love to train. And I mean, I am training for 2 big events this year, and but I'm totally with you on that. I think that's my why, because I love it. Jody?
So my initial was really to get fit and stay healthy. And then when I started doing the races, I started doing them with friends, which really became more of, I guess it added a social component to it, but it made it more of a fun activity. And then it became self-competitive. So, now the why is, can I still be as good as the last time? And, what can I do to make myself more cardiovascular fit? But, a lot of it has to do with just participating in, I don't know, just being part of a group, an event, and things of that nature.
Nicole?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Tim. Listen, I got into this a long time ago. I've been at this for like 14 years, I think.
Wow.
I got into it for the challenge. I heard a friend told us about her doing her first triathlon, which was Iron Girl, which was basically in my backyard. So I said, wow, that sounds like a real challenge. And I decided to take it up. And as I guess Tim said, it's become my lifestyle. So even last year, I kept training. I actually broke my foot in March and didn't get an okay to run until late July, but I did everything else I could. I swam, I biked what I was allowed. I got into rowing, just because I love the lifestyle, I love the training, and I do love to race. So that's what kept me at it.
Janet? I don't know if you could talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I guess just what I look forward to is, I guess, the challenge of just trying to get faster, trying to get better, where if I'm just, running regularly from week to week with no real goal, I don't have that push to try to improve, speed or distance or whatever it is. So I think that helps with the races.
I actually fall kind of in the same category as her. I was actually, having trouble getting restarted after, doing it for so long that I was like, I'm go hit 4 weeks of just getting training in every day, and then I'll see from there. And I was even struggling, with getting back for a week. So I was like, okay, signing up for a race. Like I'll pick something down the road. I won't really care how it goes, but if I put a carrot out there a couple months down the road, then it'll give me, it'll get me out every day and get me kind of restarted and re-going. But to touch on like Hillary and Steve, what you guys said about how you realize that you enjoy the training aspect of it, and it's made you realize that maybe you don't need the racing as much as you used to. That has been the most common thread that I've heard in the last, we'll say 9 months, since we were kind of in the middle of this thing talking to people, was that we're not racing, but we're gonna go, we're gonna keep training because we like the training. And a couple weekends ago, myself, my wife, and a couple of friends that have been in our triathlon club that Nicole and I are in for a very long time, we all got together and did like a responsible ride, and then social distance ride, and then went and had some coffee. And it was the we're not training for anything, but we still like to ride our bikes kind of ride. So it was no drop, keep the pace chill, just go out and have some fun, and then and then drink some coffee afterwards, because it's we're not training, but let's get out and do something, and let's have that social aspect that like Jody talked about. Me getting into this sport, just my personal story. I mean, Nicole and I are in, like I met my wife in that club. I've built a business off of having success in the club, training, racing, working with other people. Someone I met in the club was the DJ for my wedding, so like my personal life is tied to this sport, in a whole lot of ways. And so I love that social aspect of it. I miss our monthly club meetings where we all got together for happy hour and had a speaker and hung out, and it was a social gathering and that kind of stuff. And I look forward to when we get back to those days, whenever that will be, who knows. But it's that combination of things and figuring out what it is that keeps you drawn in, which for everybody is something different, and it's personal. Once you have a pinpoint on what that is, then that's your strength to kind of keep going, so to speak.
Excuse me. So races are going to start. Let's talk about mentally preparing for this, because I think that's more, it really is more important, because I think mentally you could do it. You can do it. You can get it done. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And obviously the mental, as far as the racing goes, there's a lot of different mindsets and approaches to racing, right? Some people, they race because they enjoy the experience of racing. Some people race because they want to be better than they were, last week, last year, last race. Some people race, competitively, in that they're racing for positions or podiums or qualifying spots or whatever. So whatever your reason for racing kind of will dictate the mindset somewhat. But as far as preparing yourself mentally to get back to racing after a long layoff, I have found, and I am finding amongst my clients, that my really competitive clients, like the ones that race, that are, we'll call them faster, right? Whatever, the people who are racing for spots and positions and things like that, they're struggling a lot more and are a lot more stressed about getting back to racing, because I don't want to say the standard that they're holding themselves to is higher, because that's not true, right? Because everybody has a different reason, and whatever your reason is equally as important in it as anyone else's. But their focus on their finish that's their why, so they're stressing and struggling over it. And so it's been a lot of conversations of, you've been training, right? We've been hitting the marks, you've been hitting your training, like all your numbers are good, and this is all fun. Like, it's there, right? Like, the ability is there, you put in the work, like, but take the pressure off of yourself. No one's raced in a year, so it's fine. Just once you get out there and you start splashing around in the water, like, it'll come back. But you want to go in with the reasonable understanding that it's been over a year since most of us have raced. So it's not going to be immediately like it was. If you've been doing this for a while, like, I don't know about you guys and how long everyone individually has been racing. Like, Nicole's been racing a long time, like myself. When you're in a race, it's kind of, that you're watching your numbers and stuff, but it's really kind of automatic. You're going through the paces of, you know that your swim is your swim, and I know that my bike, I need to be focusing on this number, and I need to be getting my fueling in here, and the run, I know that I need to be hitting these aid stations, and I need to keep my heart rate here. Like, that stuff, all you don't lose that because it's been a year and a half. That stuff will come back as soon as you're in it. You're not just going to forget how to race. You just need to be kind to yourself and give yourself a little bit of leeway, getting back into it. We're all going to be rusty in some aspects. Like, my best strength in triathlon is transitions, which is the weirdest thing on earth to have as your best strength. But I'm usually, like, I don't know why. It is nothing special that I ever was taught, learned, what have you. Like, I have certainly minimized my transitions, but I'm always fast in transition. Don't have any clue why. But I fully expect when I race in the end of June that like I'm gonna fumble putting my shoes on, or I'm gonna go to run off and realize that I forgot something, turn around and go back and get, because I'm rusty. I haven't done it in a while. And at the time, I'm probably gonna be like, oh, come on, Tim, you're better than that, blah, blah, blah. But it happens. Like it's okay. I expect it to happen. The beauty of this sport is there's always more races to be had. So cut yourself a little bit of slack. Take that race, whether you're trying to do better or just do it or not, whatever. Make sure to enjoy being in the moment of the race instead of putting so much stress on the execution of it. Enjoy the fact that after a year plus, we're able to race, in whatever form that is. And it may just change your entire outlook on how you approach things. And like I race to win and I race hard. A few years ago, I started taking the stress of my times off of myself on race day. Like I want to go faster. I want to get my times down. I have goals when I go in, but I stopped beating myself up if I didn't hit them, and that kind of stuff, and started appreciating the racing more than just looking at it as data to crunch later. And for me, that changed a whole lot for me. And I actually got faster because I started focusing on different things instead of I'm not hitting this pace and then going down a rabbit hole and slowly unraveling because I'm winding myself up. It was, well, all I have is this, but if I can just stay here, then I don't know what's going to happen ahead of me. And oftentimes things change, so just give yourself a breather, give yourself a break and enjoy being back to racing.
So I'd like to open this up to the floor, and I'm sure that each and every one of you have thoughts and fears and anticipation and whatever toward racing. Do you have you want to share some of your thoughts with us? And maybe, if you have questions for Coach Tim, he could answer them.
Yeah, bring them on. Bring your questions, your concerns. If there's anything that you're worried about or unsure of, or just to fire them off, and we'll cover them one at a time. Hi, Ray.
Hey, Tim, how you doing? Actually, I was thinking, Tim, your whole description is, kind of a great way to approach it, just because I think one of the things that if we go out and try to set a PR first race, you're going to injure yourself, or at least increase the probability of injuring. But I just like the whole attitude of just enjoying it and being, grateful we're out there it just kind of resonates. So
I triathletes by nature tend to be type A, right? They're analytical, they over-examine everything. Like that's the nature of the beast, and that can be good when in training or that kind of stuff, but it can also lead you down paths towards negativity when things don't go the way that you like. And I know I had to have a conversation with myself about this, and I've had countless ones with athletes that I coach or just have worked with at races or just friends. And I'm like, remember, you as an athlete don't get paid to do this. This is a hobby. This is a lifestyle. It should be a positive influence in your life and not a negative one. And once you can kind of separate it in that form and fashion, then it makes everything so much better, man. It really does. I had a race years ago where I had 3 flats in a 70.3 on the bike. And when I had the 3rd flat and was sitting on the side road waiting for SAG to bring me a tube, I got passed by a guy that I knew and who was in my age group. And it turned out he came off of the bike first in age group. So at the time of my 2nd flat, I was still leading and was, way clear of everybody. And it was just so hilariously bad the way the whole day went, that when I got in, I was riding in and I'm going, there's no point in running this half marathon. Like, not gonna not going to get what I want out of it. There's no point. And then I was like, no, just go run. Like, just go start running and see what happens. So I went out and ran. I stood on the side of the road for like 5 minutes and talked to some friends that had done the short course race that were already done, that were just standing out on the course spectating. And they're like, aren't you still racing? I just stood there till you. So then I like went and jogged off, and I like stopped and talked to people at the aid stations, and it was like a parade lap, and it was my slowest half Ironman to date. And but I had so much fun. Like, it was so fun out there. I just didn't care anymore. And I was like, man, if you can keep this mindset, you can have a lot of fun doing this stuff. And it's been way more positive ever since.
I was thinking when you're talking, Tim, about races, right? I don't think I've ever had a completely good race. Like, I might have had a good swim, or I might have had a good bike or run or whatever, but never all three, like, or transition, of course. I mean, that I'm not good at transition like you are. So what is that about? Like, I mean, are there any perfect races?
I can't say no to that. I can tell you that I have in my career, I've had 2 races that went exactly how I wanted them to go.
Wow.
2. And one was, the first one was kind of forced. I had pulled the muscles in between my ribs in a 5K. And so I couldn't really run hard, I couldn't do anything super hard leading into this race because it hurt. So I was like, I can swim the swim, and on the bike, I'll get it right to this point, and then I'm just gonna have to hold it there. I can't go any harder because I need to be able to run. And I hit that perfectly, and I came off the bike. Hi, Barbara. Running well. And I came off bike and I felt good. I hadn't like burned myself up, on the bike. And I just settled into the run, and I'm going, man, this is so much better when you're not already dying when you start the run. I ended up having a pretty good day. I think I was like 9th or 10th overall at this race, first time there. It was a good day. And then my last one was actually in 2019. I had a race that I went into with a goal. I had a time goal in my head. I said, this is where I'm at. And like, I hit my swim within 12 seconds of where I wanted to be. I hit my bike within 30 seconds of where I wanted to be. And then I actually ran over a minute faster than I was anticipating. And the whole race, it was like being on cruise control. And I was actually out front. I was lucky enough to win the race overall, but I was out front, and I had a mile to go in the run, and I could see the course. I was up on top of this hill, and I could see the guy in second. And I literally just took my foot off the gas. I was like, there's no way he's going to catch me. And I'm just going to soak in the fact that I ran the race that I had been searching for my entire career in this sport. I started doing this stuff in 2007, and in 2019, I executed my perfect race. So they're there, but they're very rare. But I think that's why I like this sport. It's the same reason I like golf. There is no perfect score. There is no perfection. You can always get better. You can always execute more. In bowling, you can bowl a 300. In baseball, you can pitch a perfect game. Like, there is perfection, and it doesn't exist here. And I think that's what I like about it the most.
Anybody else have any questions for Coach Tim?
Can I say something, just to add on to a couple of things that Tim said?
Please.
So, yeah, I've been racing it will be 30 years next year. And I'm going to go back and do the first try that I did in 1992,
Nice.
which I went out to do because somebody that I work with said, you've been running around, and I know you go down to the beach and swim on the weekends. You should try this. And I really enjoyed it and had a good time. I have to tell you that if anybody looked at what I looked at like that day and looked at my present aero equipment and bike, you would say, man, that was incredible. I rode a 3-speed Raleigh with a child seat on the back and some cut off, whatevers. But I had a really, really good time, and I stuck with the sport for 30 years. But like, there's a couple things, like, I'm going to say to you that when you have an expectation of how you're going to do, you put a lot of pressure on yourself. So I agree with you 100%. If you say, I'm going to swim X and bike X or run X, or I'm going to go out and do a 5K and I'm going to run sub 24 minutes, or I'm going to run sub 22 minutes, it becomes your personal pressure, as opposed to, I'm just going to go out, I'm going to enjoy myself, I'm going to do the best I can and not have any expectation on time. Like, I'll just also want to say something about transitions. I'm probably one of the worst people in transitions. Like, I could have been on the podium in so many races if I would have just gotten out of there a minute faster or 2 minutes faster or whatever. I mean, I've gotten texts after Ironman races and emails from my children asking me if I got a manicure and got my hair done in the transition area. Like, did you get a manicure? Because we were looking at your time. We didn't see that you got out of it. So
That's funny.
But like, you could have a really good day, but I'm going to go back to what Hillary said also about sometimes it's hard to put it all together. So I think it was last 2 years, Atlantic City. I had a really good swim. I had a really good bike. And basically all I had to do was run under 2 hours on the half. And I think I could have qualified for the world championships. Like, my times up to that were good enough. And I didn't. And I'm still mad about that, because I had an expectation when I hit that run course that here's what I was going to do. Not, I'm just going to see how it goes. And once you put that expectation on yourself, regardless of what, I know it's better not to race against everybody else and just stay there and be within yourself. But once you do that, that creates a whole new thing. You must see that all the time.
And I'll just, something that I picked up in when I started working with the guys I partnered with out West, who most of them either currently still do or used to race professionally, is pro triathletes do not care what their time is on a course. They don't care. All they care about is how they race relative to everyone else. So they don't go in and like, they're not like, oh, if I don't swim 45 minutes, this was a loss. They say, did I get out with the people I should have got out with, right? Courses are fast, courses are slow, conditions vary. Like, age groupers put way more pressure on themselves than professionals do. Professionals are like, as long as I, because for them, it's all about being in groups or staying together here and there. And they're like, did I get out of the water with the right pack? Then it doesn't matter what my swim time was, right? Did I get off the bike, keeping my powered heart rate where I wanted it to be, and I'm where I would like to be? Don't care what my bike time is, right? They manage the things that they can manage, and then they let the chips fall where they're going to fall as it relates to time. And that was something that I started, doing later. And like I was saying, with that race where I was fortunate enough to win, like, I could have ran almost a minute faster and dropped the time. And, I was lucky enough to set the course record, but not by much. Like, I could have smashed it and took it way out of reach for other people in the future, but it didn't matter. It was like, well, I'm going to win. Like, I'm in the best position, and I just want to enjoy this position instead of, trying to find something else and then being disappointed or whatever. And so you're 100% right, Steve. Like, it's added pressure. And a lot of people also worry about what their friends are going to think about their time. I used to worry about that.
I'm just hoping I don't get that. Did you get a manicure in transition? But I definitely tried to improve that. I just want to say also, perfect race. I remember watching Challenge Daytona, and Paula Finley won that race. And, that was, she was one of the favorites, but a little unexpected. And the interview with her after the race was like, what'd you think? And she said, that was a perfect day. It was the best day I ever raced in my life. So like, it could happen, but
it doesn't happen all the time, though. It's more the opposite, not things going wrong.
Right. But you can, it's like, I watched last weekend 70.3 St. George, and I did the original Ironman St. George. My picture's up on the wall there, May 1st, 2010, which I ran the run course at a camp with Michael Lovato, so I was getting a good chuckle as he was calling the race. But I will never forget that day of that race, not because I had a great time or because my expectation was, am I capable of finishing this? This is just a brutal course.
Yep.
And I'll never forget that. It doesn't really matter what my time was, because it mattered to me. It was the challenge of just being able to get to the finish line.
Yep.
And sometimes that's
just
what
it.
matters.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Ray, you look like you got
So-
something.
So, I'm sorry.
I said, Ray looks like he's got something.
Well, I was just saying on
He
top of
always
that,
has something.
especially for the older age groupers, I imagine that, as we get slower, we're also putting up more pressure just because we're trying to keep up with our younger self,
100%. I work with a lady who's in her 60s, and I mean, she's a stud in her 60s. Like, she's an animal. And she did a 5K a while ago and was disappointed. And she's like, yeah, I was 2.5 minutes off my PR. And I'm like, well, when did you set your PR? And she's like, oh, when I was 31. And I'm like, you're 63. I'm like, you're not, the goal once you reach your athletic peak, in age and time in the sport, is we want to delay the slowing down process. Like, you get to a point where you physically can't keep getting faster because father time always wins. So we're trying to minimize the losses. And then she's always disappointed in her races because she compares them to back then. And then she did a 10 miler just 2 weeks ago, and she was a minute and a half off of her personal best, which is from a long ways ago. And she's like, and she beat what she thought she was going to run by like 5 minutes. And we've been working together for 2 years, and it's the first time she's ever been excited about her finish. And it's like, oh, she qualified for Worlds and won her age group. Yeah, but I was 4 minutes faster 12 years ago. I'm like, oh, come on, just enjoy it. Like, you're doing great. Enjoy it. So
There was a woman,
there, Ray.
Yeah, there was a woman that we used to run with who was 73 years old, and same thing, she would always place in her age group, but was always disappointed in her time. I was like, what are you saying? You're on the podium. You're number one.
I'm sure I'll be that way too. I'll be like, I remember when I actually do that now, because long time ago when I was a teenager, I ran a 4:53 mile, and so I'm like, I remember back then. And I'm like, there's no way I could run that or even get close to that now. And I'm like, but it doesn't matter. What matters is where I am relative to all the other people that are my age. Like, what matters. And so that's the focus, and it's all good. We're all adapting. We all have slightly new us's, and there's going to be slightly new protocols, and we're all it's kind of like jumping back in all over again, and it's new, and everybody's nervous again, and that's good. That's okay. It's bringing energy back,
Tim, before we wrap this up, can you provide us with a couple of real tips that we can actually walk away with?
Yeah. Number one is, when you get to your venue, relax. Okay. Nothing is going to be as efficient as it was before this. Getting your packet's going to take longer. You're going to have to, everything is going to be longer and slower, and the volunteers are all still trying to figure all this stuff out. And there's a lot of added stress on them, and they are doing the best they can. And if anybody's like me, I hate being slow at everything, whether it's sitting in the car in traffic or, I'm like, come on, let's just keep going. So this is mostly a tip for me, is just relax. Be happy that we're back racing, that people are volunteering to help us, to allow us to do it. Number two is, and I touched this one earlier, is don't expect everything to be perfect, right? We're all going to be rusty. We're all going to have nerves. If you have a panic attack in the water because it's been a year and a half since you raced, just so pop up and catch your breath and remember that you're here and why you're here, and get back to it. And I guess number three, which kind of ties them both in together, is really just be grateful that we're doing it. There's always another race. We're always going to have more time to get back into the swing of this and work on getting back to being better versions of ourselves as far as finish times and that kind of stuff, and improving where we were. But after missing this stuff for over a year, just be glad that someone opened the door and we can do it again, and then the rest will fall into place. And hopefully in 3 years, we'll say, oh, do you all remember when we're sitting around in person having cocktails after a race and there's no masks involved, and we're like, oh, do you remember the dark days? Then we can worry and complain about our times and how we blew up on the run course and that kind of stuff. But for now, just be grateful that we get to experience it again, man, because I know I took it for granted because it's been such a normal part of my life for so long that when it was taken away, I was kind of like, what do I do now? It was like, I don't have a race to train for. What do I do? So now I'm going to go into it and just enjoy the heck out of it, and then go from there.
Awesome. That was great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And with that, I think we're a wrap.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks,
I
Hillary.
appreciate it, guys.
Thanks.
Everybody have a good day. All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.